In today's video, I'm going to talk about how I found peace with food on my 80-pound weight loss journey. So when I was obese, I did not have a peaceful relationship with food. It was more like a war. I always felt like every time I sat down, I just felt stressed out. Every bite I put in my mouth, it just felt like this battle was going on in my head. Am I eating the right things? Am I eating too much? Am I not eating enough? Is this the right food to be eating? And it was just stressful. But as I went on this journey, I unexpectedly found peace with food. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about how that actually happened for me. I think it might be helpful to go back and talk about where I kind of lost peace with food. Like, I think everybody's just kind of probably born with this good relationship with food, but somewhere along the way, it gets messed up for some of us. And for me, that moment, I think, came when I was about 6 years old. I went to a doctor's appointment just for a checkup, and they basically told me I was overweight, and they gave me this sheet of paper. And to my recollection, it was a piece of paper that said, eat these foods and don't eat these. And I remember thinking, I hate all the food that's allowed. And I remember from that point on, just kind of feeling like it was unfair. This is not right. Other people just eat what they want. Not everybody gets this sheet of paper. And then, throughout my childhood into adulthood, I struggled with my weight. I was always on a diet, and that was stressful too, because I felt like the rules were constantly changing. When I was a kid, it was low fat, that's the way it's supposed to be. And then after a while, it was no, carbs are maybe bad. And then it was carbs are definitely bad. And then, nowadays it's even more extreme. It's oh, you got to be vegan, or no, that's terrible. You got to be carnivore. And so when it was all said and done, it just made it so that every time I sat down, I just felt overwhelmed when it came to the topic of food. And the conclusion I came to was my relationship with food needed to change. I wasn't exactly sure how to do that, but I did know that it needed to change because, even when I would get down to my goal weight, when I would diet, it was not good. I usually was just stressed out. I was always worried, oh, this food that I'm eating is just going to put the weight back on, which it did. And so it was always complicated and not peaceful at all. But there were three things that happened on my weight loss journey that just unexpectedly brought me peace with food. The first one was getting rid of the idea of forbidden foods. So I just decided I'm going to let myself eat the foods that I like. Whatever I want to eat, that's what I'm going to eat. I'm not going to worry about trying to cut out food groups or limit certain things. I'm just going to eat the food, what I like. That's what I'm going to eat. That's what's on my plan. And quite frankly, I thought that this would be a terrible idea. I thought that I would probably gain a lot of weight when I finally just told myself I can eat what I want. But that's not what happened. The first thing that happened was that the guilt that I had previously felt anytime I sat down to eat really anything, it was gone. Because once I told myself there are no forbidden foods, you can just eat what you like, then whenever I sat down to eat, it was on plan, on plan. I could just eat it. It was allowed. And so there was no more overthinking about oh, is this okay to eat because it's got, carbs, or oh, is this all right to eat because it's bread, or, it was just, this is food, it's allowed. And it just made things so much easier. Another thing that I found, which was really interesting, was the allure of those same foods that I used to think were forbidden. That was just gone. That power that they had, it was just gone. I thought, if I tell myself I can just eat double stuffed Oreos whenever I want them, they're not, a special food. They're not a treat food. It's just whenever I want them, I can have them. I thought I'm going to be pounding Oreos, all the time. But that's not what happened. I just found oh, well, since I can have them anytime, I found that I didn't want them very often at all. I still do love them, and I enjoy eating them, but that power they had, it was just gone. And I think this has to do with the whole idea of forbidden food is the sweetest. If you tell yourself it's off limits, you can't have it, it just creates this power. But if you just tell yourself you can have it whenever, and you really do mean it, that was something that I had to learn. I had to really mean this. In the past, I had told myself, well, you can eat just whatever, but I didn't really mean it. What I really meant was you got to really watch what you eat. You can eat those things sometimes, but really not very often at all. And it was just really restrictive. But when I really meant it, you can eat it whenever you want, even if that means you eat double stuffed Oreos every day, I just found that I didn't want those things every day. Another weird thing that happened was once there were no forbidden foods, I found I had stopping power. Before, when I would have, these certain foods, like I need to take it easy on these things, like I would just have no control. Like I would just eat and eat and eat. But once I told myself, yeah, you can just eat, however much you want, and however often you want it, I could just stop. I just stopped when I was full. Another change that I made was that I decided to be grateful for every bite. So instead of like having this idea in my head of like, these are good foods and these are bad foods and that kind of thing, I just said, I'm going to be grateful for everything that is put before me. And so 2 practical ways I do this are, one, by just saying a prayer before I eat, just, saying thank you to God for giving me this food. And the second thing I do is to not overeat. G.K. Chesterton has this great quote, which is, "We thank God for beer and burgundy by not drinking too much of them." And I think the same principle applies to food. We can show God that we're really grateful for the food by not overeating. So what I found was when I approached my food with this sense of gratitude, I'm so grateful that this food is here, it just made the whole experience a lot more peaceful. It's just really hard to be stressed out about food when you're too busy being grateful for it. So those 2 things, not having forbidden food and then being grateful for the food I have, those are pretty concrete. But this next one is a little bit more nebulous. And that is, I put food in its proper place. And this is where intermittent fasting really helped me, because I didn't realize at the time that I had put an inordinate amount of importance on food in my life. Now, that's the tricky part, I think, because we do need food in order to survive. You have to eat. So that makes it tricky. But I had just made it where it was like, the best part of my day was eating. Like that was the thing that I looked forward to. It was what I turned to whenever I was tired or stressed or bored or angry, anything like that. I would just turn to food. And I should have been doing other things like praying about it or, talking to the person that I was upset with or, taking action on things that were stressing me out. And intermittent fasting helped me to do that, because the fasting window made it so that I could no longer turn to those things. I had to figure out different ways of handling those emotions, of doing things with my time other than eating. And so then that made the eating experience during the eating window much more enjoyable. It was peaceful because I was more peaceful and because food was in its proper place in my life. All that being said, I want to make it clear that even though I have found peace with food, that doesn't mean I'm perfect. There are times where I sit down and I eat too much. And there are other times where I'm just not grateful. I'm in a bad mood and I'm just an ingrate. And there are times where I'm eating and then in hindsight, I realize like, I was just eating because I was stressed out. I really wasn't hungry. But the thing is, now that my relationship with food has changed, I'm just more peaceful about it. And I forgive myself quickly if I mess up. So that's how I found peace with food on the weight loss journey. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you'd like more information about intermittent fasting, you can check out my book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting. It's available on Amazon as an ebook, paperback, and as an audiobook read by me on Audible. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching.